Welcome everybody to the first episode of Man, We Need to Talk, the podcast that focuses on male mental health and the stigmas that are still attached to it in today's modern society. My name is Tom Ball, I'm from Northampton in the UK, and I've lived here all my life. I set up this podcast because I've personally had challenges with my mental health, and I think it's wrong that so many men feel like they can't seek help. Over the coming weeks, we will be speaking to various guests from different walks of life. The goal of the podcast is to raise awareness and to signpost people to the right services. I really hope you enjoy the podcast. So, let's get started. Let me introduce you to Matt Noland, a friend of mine for some years, and his friend Adam Christopher. They are both postmen at the Royal Mail and have kindly come to speak to us about their experiences with mental health. So, first off, Matt, how you been, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, not so bad, mate. Not so bad. It's been a bit of a mad year, really, hasn't it?
Strange
I think everyone
times.
can agree on that.
Strange times, definitely, mate.
There's just not been a year like it, that's for sure. So, I mean, I suppose that brings us into the subject matter as well. You know, I guess there's so many people out there going through mental health problems, maybe as a result of what's going on this year as well. I mean, I can personally say that I have been. You know, I've had problems this year in my mind, sort of things come to a head. And, you know, I was at a crisis at one point in my mind. And thankfully, I'm working through that now. But one of the reasons why I created this podcast was to speak out to people who have had the same sort of issue. So, Matt, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, like, if you've had any experiences with mental health.
Yeah, well, I'm 37 and I've had mental health problems on and off now for probably a good 20 years. It all started when I was about 17 or 18, and I used to get quite bad anxiety attacks, and yeah, that's how it began. Sort of progressed as the years have gone on to more depression now, but
Yeah, it sort of gets worse, doesn't it? Once it starts, it gets worse. Well, in my experience anyway, it's one of those things where it's just like, it's something that begins and then it's sort of, if you don't deal with it head on, it gets a lot worse, you know. In terms of how it's affected you in your life, would you say it's had a big effect on sort of like family life and work life, or is it something that you've worked through, or?
yeah, I mean, it's never nice going to work and, you know, have a head full of worry and depression and anxiety. But
Yeah,
I've always sort of fought through it, which I think is the key. Anybody out there listening who's in a similar sort of position, I'd definitely say that's a massive thing, is to try and push through the hard days. Don't let it beat you. And that's what I've done. And eventually you do see lighter days.
Yeah, definitely. That's really good advice, mate. And I totally agree. It's like, you know, the more you sit on the problem and the more you let it sort of build up and you don't deal with it, the more it affects your life and the further away you're going to be from where you want to be. And whilst coming out and speaking about your problem, it might not solve it initially. It certainly helps. It definitely helps, I think.
I think what's important as well is to say, obviously, you know, I'm a happily married man, you know, got a lovely daughter. It doesn't matter, you know. People have said to me in the past, you know, but why why did you feel like that? You got no reason to feel like that. You don't need a particular reason to feel like it in your head. There's something that creates
Exactly.
it. It doesn't. You could be the happiest guy in the world. You know, a good example of this is, look at Tyson Fury.
Yeah, legend.
Someone like that, you know, is a big tough man, or seen to be a big tough man, heavyweight champion of the world. And he's completely open with his mental health issues, you know, and I think that's a good example to look at, that you know, you don't need to necessarily be, you know, it can be anybody. It can hit anybody at any time.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, it really can come out of the blue. And just touching on what you said about Tyson Fury, man, what a legend. He is just such a dude, isn't he?
Yeah,
I mean, what
great.
He's doing for this is just incredible.
Yeah, it's great. And I think this sets the sort of the precedent, if you like, this is what we need to do. And I think it helps. It's certainly helped myself, you know, with my day-to-day sort of life, seeing his Instagram posts. And it's not just him either, it's various famous people, you know, they come out and admit to what they're feeling like. And I think it's great because it's showing the world, you know, you don't have to be scared to talk, you know, and you can be anybody. It doesn't matter who you are, you know, it can hurt the best of us.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, it can affect anyone. And it's like, if you have a physical injury or something like that, I don't know, you break your leg or you fall over and have a bad injury or something, like, people can immediately see the impact of that on your life and the sympathy or, the reaction to it as it should be. But it's almost like when you've got a mental health problem, there's a lot of sort of stigmas attached to it, and some people are not really sure how to deal with it and would prefer to brush it under the carpet and stuff like that. So maybe that's why men find it difficult as well, because they expect to be like the strong character that provides and stuff like that. I mean, why do you reckon, mate? Why do you reckon that men find it so difficult to speak about the struggles that they're having?
I think you just hit the nail on the head there, mate. To be honest, I think a lot of men, feel shame, to perhaps show any weakness, and obviously men in the years gone by, we've always been the ones who are meant to be the tough ones, and I think this is the sort of mentality we need to shake off, because when you look at the statistics, it's reflecting that men are the ones predominantly who are the ones who are harming themselves. And I think, it's crucially important, especially during these times, to be talking about it. And it certainly helps me.
Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, just to touch on what you said about men harming themselves, at the moment, there's 84 men are taking their lives every week in this country, and that's just in England alone. And that's really quite an unfortunate statistic. And it's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast, is I wanted to just see if there's anything that we could do as a collective just to sort of raise awareness on that matter, And I think that what I find interesting about it is that in terms of the suicide rate in general, I think it's 75% of men. So 75% of suicides is men. So it almost indicates that like women are more able to share their problems before it becomes to a crisis point. Moving on slightly, what do you think about, like in certain industries, for example, like a construction industry and those sort of industries, I always feel as though those sort of men feel in particular that they can't speak about these things because it's sort of like a macho environment. In terms of what you do, I know you're a postman and you work in the Royal Mail. How do you think in those sort of places, do you think if you had a problem that people would be happy to come out and speak about it, or is there still those sort of masculinity expectations within that environment?
Well, I mean, I know plenty of people at Royal Mail who have anxiety and depression, and we all talk about it. The chap
really
sitting
good.
next to me now, Adam, and we've sort of become friends from sharing our experiences,
Supporting each other as well.
Yeah, and it's what I will say, I don't think enough is being done. I don't think there's really a decent outlet, if you like, to talk about it when you're having those bad days, other than sort of talking to your work pals, which I think is something that's also got to change.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also one of the biggest problems is, like you just touched upon there, a lot of people don't really know what help there is available, what they can do to start to address the problems that they're having. Often when you go to the doctors and speak about these problems, in my experience anyway, now I'm not giving a professional opinion on medication because I'm not in a position to do that. However, in my experience, whenever I've went to the doctors, it seems to be like, I'll just give them this, like some antidepressants or something to help them relax or something like that. Now, that might work in some cases, but is it really a long-term solution? I'm not entirely sure. And I feel as though the situation in this country is like there's not really access to like therapy programs at the first point, and I just think that's like disappointing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, that's one thing I've learned on this journey, if you like, that it's not always just about. I think medication can be effective. If I was honest, I think when you're in a certain low black hole, I think that they are effective to try and get you back to the even keel. I think that's a crucial thing to get back on that even keel. But I have also figured out that mind training is a massive thing. There's so much stuff on YouTube, and there's so many people out there. I've got a mind trainer, and he's been brilliant. He's helped me so much over the past year or so. And it's completely different to the sort of thing you'd expect, at a doctor's or a counsellor.
Different perspective, is it?
Different perspective entirely, sort of explaining how the mind works, how to control certain thoughts, and just think more positively. And it's such a help,
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really positive thing. How long have you been doing that for?
Probably about a couple of years now. I've been talking to this chap sort of on and off. He's got various videos online as well. He's a great bloke, you know. He's taught me a lot about how the mind works, and it's very important.
Yeah, totally. So I can relate to that, Matt, because in the last few months, I've also had a mental health crisis. And one of the best ways that's helped me out of it is learning how to reframe situations and look at it from a different perspective. Because if you let the situation consume you from the same perspective, it can seem like 10 times worse than it is. So one of the things that I've learned is to really sort of reframe what I can and be grateful for what I do have. And that really helps me drive forward, you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know, just to be grateful as well, and not get too depressed about the things that have happened and stuff like that, you know, because that can make things a lot worse. I mean, like, what do you think? Do you think the same?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think keeping active is definitely the most important thing I've learned over the past probably couple of years now. Strangely enough, on a Sunday morning, it seemed to be most Sundays, you know, that used to be the day, for some strange reason I just cannot get my head around, was with the days it used to get me.
Really?
I think it's because you're not in your routine, you're not getting up, you're going to work, you know, you're out of your normal routine, and keeping busy is a massive thing. If I wake up, you know, on the Sunday morning now, like I do now, and know that I've got some plans, know that we're going to go and do this, going to do that.
Yeah.
It's massive, you know, for your mental health. I think if you let it get inside your brain, if you know, let it eat you up, it will. So you've got to fight the tide, and that's a massive tip I will say for people out there who, in a similar position, keep as busy as you can. Just keep as busy as you can. You know, see your friends, and just don't let it eat you up.
Yeah, definitely. That's really great advice. And so you think like a routine's important as well, especially when you're going through that sort of crisis?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, if you dwell on it too much, you know, you could be sitting in the house. You know, if you dwell on it and Google stuff, which is the sort of stuff I've done in the past, and it depends what kind of thing you're having, what type of anxiety and stuff. But I used to get health anxiety. At the beginning, I used to be convinced I was having a heart attack.
Or hypochondria?
Yeah, definitely. Not so much these days because I've learned how to overcome these feelings. But, you know, I used to go out a lot, and you know, during hangovers and stuff like that is when I used to sort of feel it the worst. Now I'm sort of getting a bit older and calm down a little bit. It seems to be a lot better, you know?
Yeah, I would totally agree on that. I mean, for me, like alcohol and stuff, it just makes everything 10 times worse. And that's a good thing we can actually move on to now, because my views on alcohol personally, for me, and I think it varies from person to person, but for me, it certainly affects me in a negative way. Not necessarily when I'm drunk, because when I'm drunk, I'm generally quite happy drunk. But like in the days after, I just don't feel right. I don't feel like and my anxiety seems worse. So and then also in this country, there's also a lot of sort of peer pressure to drink and stuff like that. And it's also like a regular thing that people do. But for me, I don't generally drink because I find it doesn't really help me. So it could be insightful for some people out there, if they are in the middle of a crisis, that even just 1 or 2 pints might be having a negative effect. Might be, might not be. It depends on the person, you know. But I'm just saying from my experience that particularly when I was going through the worst time, I just didn't drink at all because I knew that it was just going to make everything 10 times worse. But yeah, in terms of anxiety for me, you know, like I literally used to get so anxious that I couldn't even really I'd just avoid social situations just because it was just too like unsettling for me. I'd rather just like not go to things or not do things and stuff like that. So it really affects like the quality of your life. I mean, I don't know if you want to elaborate on your experience of anxiety,
yeah,
Matt.
definitely. You know, I think your well-being is an important thing. I never used to think that it was. People used to tell me, you know, you try and keep up with your sleep and eat healthy and don't drink much. And I used to think, that's a load of old tosh. But actually, I've learned that it's true. You know, it's true, definitely. Since I've sort of grown out of the old raving days and put me rave shoes away, I don't think it's any coincidence that I don't tend to feel like that so much these days, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it can certainly worsen the problem, can't it?
Yeah, keeping on top of your sleep and at least trying to eat healthy, and you know, not overdoing it on the drink and stuff. And it will have a positive effect, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not like preaching to anyone listening. At the end of the day, it's everyone's decision what they do. But all I'm talking about personally is my experience from it, and it's helped me to really cut back on drinking. Not that I used to drink all the time anyway, but for me it just doesn't really work so well. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same for me. So that's two of us there already.
Yeah, totally. So in terms of like the anxiety you did have, did you take any medications at all for that, or did you find them effective or not?
Yeah, I did. I took some medication. It wasn't a particularly sort of strong dosage, but it helped.
Just help take the edge off.
Yeah, it helped me sort of, because I've sort of had these problems on and off. It's never been like a constantly flowing thing. It's very on and off. Although it's always there, but when it comes to sort of to the tipping point, and that's the times when I've sort of had medication. And if I was honest with you, I'm not saying they're great, because obviously they're not great things. You can do your own research into what they can do to you and stuff like that. But I think when you're in your lowest point, if you're depressed and you're in a real low state, I definitely believe that they can help you get back onto an even keel. And it's done it for me time and time again.
So I've took, I think it was the Tilapram I had for the anxiety, and it certainly helped take the edge off to an extent. But I've always personally tried to like look at different types of therapies and stuff. But as I say, if anyone's feeling low out there at the moment, the best thing you can do is just make that appointment with the doctor and just just stop it before it gets to a crisis stage. 100%. In terms of anxiety, I know that like the anxiety levels are rising at the moment. Generally, there's a lot more admissions and people who are saying that they're suffering from anxiety. Now, I think there's obviously some of that is more people are, even though not enough people are, more people are talking about their problems, and so those levels are increasing. But one thing I reckon is the effect of social media and overuse of mobile phones is having a negative effect on anxiety. The reason why I think this is because it's like all these expectations of and all this pressure to be something, or all this perfection that you see and stuff like that. What do you reckon, Matt? Do you think that's a
yeah,
that's a thing?
definitely. I think social media has its good and bad points, if I was honest with you, because when I first started having anxiety when I was like 17, we didn't have all this, all these smartphones and stuff like that. So what I'll say is in a positive way, it can be positive because it can keep your mind active. If you're ever sort of feeling a little bit iffy, and
Yeah.
you can sit and watch some YouTube videos or talk to some friends on there. So it can. I personally, I think for me, it's had a positive effect. But I totally see your point too. When it comes to stuff like online bullying, and you see some nasty comments, don't you, and stuff like that. And so I think it's got its good and bad points, definitely.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm definitely not saying I'd want to come off social media because it's even for this podcast, it's crucial to getting the message out. So there's definitely like really important parts of it, and to keep connected with people in this really busy world. So there's 100% lots of positives from it. But I'm just saying that there's some people out there where there's a lot of looking at their phone a lot and stuff, and it almost overworks the brain into this expectation of, oh, maybe I should be doing this, should be doing that. Or,
Yeah,
like, they're not
definitely.
really good enough. Whereas 20 years ago, you didn't really think those things. You just had what you did, and you went about your life, and you weren't really exposed to all of this perfection and that sort of thing. So it's almost like the simple life compared to now, where there's just so much noise constantly. Do you know what I mean?
It's like it's like almost sort of standard that you want to sort of live your life at. You see other people with things and stuff you can't have, and it sort of almost makes you feel bad about it, doesn't it? You see all these great things all the time, and that's the trouble as well. People only tend to put the good things on, don't they?
Yeah.
But everybody, behind closed doors, you just don't know what anyone's going through. So
No, you really don't,
easy
do
to
you?
get sort of caught amongst all this social media hype, if you like, and
Yeah.
so, but yeah.
I think you assume that it's perfect as well, and a good thing to sort of come off the back of that is like, you really don't know what anyone's going through in their mind. It's like the last sort of few years, I've had a good little business in the events industry. Obviously, coronavirus wiped that out, and that was one of the things that triggered the problems I had this year, because I just started building that to a good point where it was going quite well, and it didn't happen. But going back to my point, it's almost like you just don't know what's going on, like in someone's head, you know, like they could seem really happy and successful, but you just don't know what's going on, and it can affect anyone. And as I say, so many people feel obliged to sort of sit on it rather than talk about it. And, you know, these problems are becoming a problem. And in the end, something happens like, well, people killing themselves every week, like 84 men killing themselves in England every week alone, you know, and that's just real tragic. And it's like I often hear, stories about this tragedy and stuff, like when someone's took their own life and the people around them are like, I just can't believe it. Like, I never saw it come in. And for me, that just sort of really brings home that point that so many people just think that, like, they can't share anything. So even the people they leave behind are often so like shocked and confused because they just seem fine. You know, and I just think it shows like the power and the pressure of the belief that you shouldn't share a problem as a man is still a real issue, don't you think, mate?
I think we've seen it time and time again, probably various pictures on social media. I can't think of his name, the lead singer from Linkin Park.
Chester Bennington.
Yeah, he's a good example of that. You know, you look at his last photos with his family, you know, completely smiling, looked happy as Larry, you know, and then obviously the next day he's gone and done that. And there's another one, Gary Speed. Don't know if you remember him, an old Welsh footballer. I think he played for Leeds. You know, he was another one. The day before he actually committed suicide, he was presenting on I think it was like, I can't remember the name of the morning Football Focus, I think it was called. Yeah, you know, and you never would have knew. So on the outside, it's you know, it's so deceiving, which is again brings us round to, I think, why it's so important to talk about it, because your mind can play serious tricks on you. I mean, in my experience, you know, people have always said to me when I've opened up about certain situations that make me feel that way, you know, they've always said, no, you just don't beat yourself up about this, and you know, there's no need to feel bad about that, and that's when it makes you realise that's why you need to talk about it, because it's then you think, oh, okay, maybe we're not all perfect.
No,
maybe, you know, we do have these wobbles in life and we make mistakes and whatever, you know, and that's a massive learning curve for talking about it, you know, how you're feeling, because it does make you realise where you're really at.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree on that. So moving on then, Matt, how do you ensure that you keep yourself well and you keep those sort of mental health issues at bay?
Well, so as we sort of touched upon a little while ago, without going into great detail, you know, it's massively important. That's one of the things I've learnt from having anxiety and depression, is that you've got to keep as active and as busy as possible. I'm not very good at sort of waking up in the morning and having a day of no plans, you know, and I personally like to have plenty planned way ahead. These things include music production, writing music, and they're two of the things personally at home that I do, which I look forward to, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose like creating something as well, it really takes the mind off things, doesn't it? Because I find, you know, that one of the best things you can do is like fill the brain with other information, because it's only if you're thinking something negative or you're dwelling on something. One of the best things that you can do is you can literally just fill your mind with other stuff. That's what I found to be really helpful. So I can imagine going deep on something like that, music production, where you were trying to perfect something and get it right.
Yeah,
you know, it's really helpful in that way, don't you think?
Yeah, it's really stimulating, definitely, 100%. I'll go into the studio in the evening and I leave all my fears and worries behind. I've got to say as well that, you know, it's having a family as well, of course, is a massive thing. You know,
100%.
My wife's great. You know, she's brilliant. She does everything for me. She understands. So I've got to have a little shout out there to Jo.
Yeah, 100%.
She's great, and obviously the little one brings so much joy and happiness to me. I can't even explain. So I just wanted to say that too.
No, that's really nice, mate. I can completely relate to that.
Yeah, but outside of you know, because you've got to have your own time too. You've got to have your own time. You've got to have your hobbies and your interests.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got to have your own space and your own hobbies and time to do things as well, haven't you, I think. And, you know, likewise for the missus as well. I think that's when things work quite well there, you know. In terms of mental health, it's healthy for people to do their own sort of thing, isn't it? Like that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Been into football and stuff like that as well.
Do you play football, or do you more just
I
follow
used
football?
to, mate. Yeah, I'm becoming a bit of an old man now, so I'm sort of struggling to do it. Got back problems and various sort of problems. So unfortunately, I can't do it like I used to.
So you're no longer Cobbler's Lionel Messi then, no? Okay, so me personally, I've always found that the gym is like an integral part to sort of making me feel well and content. You know, I just find it's like my place to go and, get any stress out that I've had over the day, and also running as well. You know, like just going for a good run, it just makes me feel so much better. Especially over the last few months, it's been like a saviour for me, like to really sort of help process those thoughts and flip them on their head. I don't know, like Matt, do you exercise at all? Or?
Yeah. Exercise definitely is a integral part of
So good,
of mental health. I think of coping with it. I think any mental health expert will tell you that keeping physically active is a massive part of it. Unfortunately, I can't do what I used to do, as I say, due to various like back problems and stuff like that. But in my job, I'm walking 8-9 miles a day. You know, it's a great thing. It's brilliant for my mental health. I couldn't really imagine sort of sitting in in an office or something like that. I think that would be the sort of job would be my hell.
Same.
So anybody out there sort of doing that sort of job.
But you can't be a day over 25. Surely you ain't got a grey hair on your head.
37, mate.
Right. So, Matt, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for coming today and sharing everything that you have. I know it's not the easiest thing to do. Like 100%, you're going to help so many people out there.
No
so
worries.
Really, really appreciate that.
No worries. It's been a pleasure, mate.
No problem. Just to finish up, like, just wondered like what your plans are for the week coming, or have you got anything ahead you're looking forward to? I know with COVID, that's not really something that.
Again, it's just trying to keep as busy as possible. We've got plenty planned with the family, and we've just booked like a little mix concert. They're doing a concert.
Oh, lovely. You'll love that.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I do. Well, pretend I don't. I do.
Oh, lovely, mate.
And just having plenty planned really, and plenty of jobs to do in the house, and just trying to keep
that really sounds like that really works for you in terms of keeping yourself
100%.
well and stuff like that.
Massive part, yeah.
Okay, lovely. So again, thanks a lot, Matt. We'll leave it there, and we'll move on to Adam now. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Tom.
Okay. So now we're on to our second guest, Adam Christopher, who's happy to join us here today and speak about his mental health experiences. Thanks ever so much, Adam, for coming on the show.
You're very welcome.
If you could just give us a bit of information about yourself and what you do, and even how you know Matt, and we'll make a start from there.
My name's Adam Christopher. I'm 40 years old. I'm a postman from Northampton. Known Matt through work, and we've sort of bonded through our struggles with our mental health issues. That sort of brought us together as a friendship. I'm just a regular family man, postman. That's pretty much mental health sufferer.
Yeah, perfect. And I know you've just touched on what Matt said earlier as well about how you both helped each other through your own mental health issues. And I think that's really, really quite cool. And that's really good for anyone out there. If there is someone that you can talk to, like I say, sometimes you might not always be so confident to speak to someone within your family unit. You could do the same like Adam and Matt, where you're helping each other deal with things like working through it, like a workmate or something like that, or someone outside of the unit you're more comfortable to speak with. So, Adam, just if you could just give me an overview of like your experience with mental health in your life and how it's affected you. I mean, I know you mentioned to me before the podcast that you've had issues with depression. Could you just explain sort of when that started to happen? Anything that you're happy to share?
Yeah, no problem. I first experienced changes in my sort of outlook, my mood and stuff when I was about 16 years old. Just finished school, went straight into work at Royal Mail, straight into an adult environment, still a child in today's eyes, 16 years old, you go straight in. And
so that's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Massive pressure. Like I said to you before we started recording, the only job that I had before I was a postman was a paperboy. So I finished school, left there, went, I think 2 weeks, went straight into an adult environment. That was in 96, and we weren't treated very well when we went in, not by the company, but by the workforce. It was very old school. You were new boys. There were the pranks and everything else that sort of that you were subjected to, and the pressure on you was so huge.
Yeah, that sort of thing's really difficult, isn't it? Like those
And it's so
initiation
different.
things.
Yeah, and it's so different now because it would not be allowed. Like, it wouldn't be accepted in today's society. How, like you said, initiation things and silly things that people thought were funny to do to you and stuff as the new kids, and it had massive effects. But I really, like I said, it would have been about 16, and I tried to mask the fact that I felt the way I did. I had a happy childhood, but the older that I got, my family situation, my home life deteriorated. There was marriage issues with my mum and dad. There was a lot of alcohol abuse, violence, and it all impacted on me. I'm one of three. I'm the middle child, and I think I took the burden of everything. My sister, as harder than I am, she sort of brushed it off. My brother was younger, so he doesn't really remember it, but it really impacted on me, and I think that shaped me as a person growing up. And I would say it sort of come to a head when I was about 18. I really then recognised that there was something wrong.
Well, I think, going through those sort of experiences can be really, really difficult, when you go through trauma and stuff like that. And often when these sort of things happen, I don't know about your individual situation, but when these sort of things happen, they're often brushed under the carpet and no one really deals with them. So instead, what happens is they manifest themselves through mental health issues and stuff like that. So do you think that happened in your case, where you just sort of didn't really deal with it head on or speak about it?
Definitely. And like you just said, I think when people experience this type of thing, like trauma in past and stuff like that, I think what they do is they put it to the back of their mind. They sort of lock it away in a part of the brain and try and forget about it. But what I've found in life is the more that you try and push something to the back of your mind and try and block it out, the more that it will come to the front, and the more the fierce the feelings will be, and the more
severe
impact that will have on you. And you keep trying to sort of push that back, but that will come back, and that's when it really gets a hold, I think.
Definitely. I think it's something that you've really got to address, with just like festers in the background, and it becomes a bigger issue than it needs to be. Probably like therapy or something like that can be really helpful, with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Could I ask, if I just wondered, like, I know you've had depression for some time and you've had it before. Have you took medication for it before, or?
Yeah. Well, I would say the past 15 years, probably 13 to 14 of them, I've been on medications. I think I've been through, if you showed me a list of medication for mental health depression, I could tick most of those. Some more severe than others. Some were used to sort of bring my mood up. Some were used to sedate me because the doctors or the professionals felt that I was in so deep that I needed to be sort of mellowed, which I hated that experience. It was awful.
Oh, I'm sure it was. And I suppose that sort of really brings home the point that dealing with things early when they're first starting to form is really helpful in terms of that, because then you haven't got have as much medication, because you're not as much at a crisis point with it. Just sort of touching on that a bit more, I know you said you started these sort of issues started to happen. Did you say 96, was it?
That's when I left school and started work at 96. So yeah, that's when I started. That's when I looked in the mirror and thought, there is a problem here.
So how would you say attitudes have changed a lot since then, or do you still think there's a lot of work to be done?
I think we've come a long way in a relatively short space of time, but I do think there's still massive scope for improvement, especially when it comes to us guys. I really do. And I think we're the ones that need to change that. Like, we're sitting here now, me, you and Matt, and we're talking. This is going to go out on the internet and stuff. This is a massive thing. If you'd have looked back to when I was talking to in the late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, I would have been sat round a table with my mates most nights. There'd have been about 6 or 7 of us. I would have never have felt comfortable and these were really good friends at the time, really close. I would have never have felt comfortable at any of those evenings, or when we were together, to say, guys, I don't feel right. Guys, there's something wrong. Guys, can you hear me out? Because even though they were my best friends, and I would have just got absolutely slaughtered. It wasn't a thing to do then. It wouldn't have been a thing to do. And I think that's where, for me, that's where my downfall was, because I didn't have an opportunity at an early stage to talk.
So you mentioned there about the, using alcohol to suppress things, and that was something that was done more so before. I totally agree with that. In my life, I've often done that. When I've been feeling low, instead of dealing with things head on, I've had a good drink and that, and really it's just confounded the issue. Like, do you still drink now? Do you drink less than you used to, or do you have a more healthy relationship with take it or leave it, or do you still think that you use it sometimes to help deal with whatever you're going through? If you don't mind me asking.
No problem. I will never use alcohol as a remedy. I will never use alcohol as a solution fixer. I was always sort of taught that alcohol is a depressant. So especially where all the years that I've been on antidepressants and stuff like that, I never found it sort of useful to be taking something to lift you and then using something to sort of bring you down. I like a social drink, but back in the day, before I sort of sought help, I used alcohol then and other substances to try and bring me to feel like somebody, because at the time I felt lost. I questioned everything in myself because I didn't understand what was going on with me. I questioned, many a times, is there a reason for me being here? I even questioned things like my sexuality, just everything about myself. I would look at it, question everything, and I just felt lost. I didn't have an identity, and I used to think that by having a drink or using recreational drugs, that gave me an identity, because that brought out this personality.
It made you feel more confident.
Exactly. The personality that I wanted to be, but I couldn't.
No, I totally relate to that, using sort of drinking drugs to feel a certain way. I think there's a lot of people out there even doing that now, It's a real shame, because really what it does is it just makes the issue even worse, and it just distorts you even more.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't. If you see, you watch the TV and you watch any soap or anything else like that, when you see a guy going through a bad time, I guarantee you somewhere in that scene he gets a bottle of scotch out, or he gets a can of beer out, or he goes to the pub and everything else. It's just what is expected, I think. It's just what's
definitely
pushed onto you, that this is what guys do. Guys will have a couple of whiskies, and who even likes whiskey? It's horrible. Do you know what I mean? But it's these whole stereotypes of how men behave and how men react and stuff like that. And I think the further we go along the mental health road, we have to knock these stereotypes down.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. And in terms of, like, I know you mentioned about recreational drugs there. Now, I think it's fair to say that, like, in this country, cocaine use is, like, out of control. Like, so many people are using it on a night out. I know even now there's not so much nights out and stuff, but I'm sure people are using it regularly as well. And I think there probably is a link between what you said there about, feeling a certain way and feeling confident that cocaine gives people. But again, it's a false feeling, and it's a false identity, and it's only going to confound any other issues that you've got at the moment. Do you know what I mean? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And the whole false feeling thing, I think that's where people end up getting in trouble, because they chase that false feeling. It's constant. And I think the more that they use these drugs, the less effect that they have. It's like chasing the dragon, isn't it? Like with heroin, the first shot they reckon is the best shot, the best fix you'll ever get, and then they're constantly chasing that one, and it never comes. And I think that is like with the recreational drug use. I think there's so much pressure on people nowadays in a society where we should be really laid back and life should be far easier than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago. I think there's so much pressure, especially on the younger generation. I'm only 40, but I'm just saying, like 20s to 30s. Image, there's such a massive thing on image. All these influencers on Instagram, all these perfect bodies and
It's real pressure, isn't
it's
it?
massive pressure. And I think if I was of that age, I would have got sucked into that as well. And I don't think that helps with people's mental health either, because they're always chasing what they feel they should be. And I think, like, going back to the drug use and stuff, I think that then helps them feel how they think they should.
They should feel,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Definitely. And I think also another thing as well, like you're saying about social media, and I know we spoke about it with Matt as well earlier, it's a real prominent point, I think, because so many people feel that they need to be a certain way or be something. So many guys think they need to be like this or be like that. And then that feeds into the whole provider situation where men feel like they need to provide. And then you see all these other successful people and maybe you haven't got that. And also, let's not forget, things are really expensive now. I mean, I'm not saying that, people had it easy in the 80s and stuff, but let's be honest, it was a lot easier to buy a house than it is now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And the pressure's there. I mean, I've had it myself, I wanted to buy a house and I've worked hard. And to be honest, it wasn't really happening because just the cost of living was so much and paying rent as well that it was like, maybe this isn't going to happen for some time. And that confounds that feeling because you're doing all you can. But yeah, things are expensive and stuff like that. And then on top of that, like you say, you've got social media, all these people like killing it and stuff like that. You can see how this creates like a recipe for disaster in people's minds. And for me, this is why people are, the suicide rate is at the worst it's been since I think 2003. I think that's when the last time it's been this high, sorry. And for me, that really feeds into it, like this expectations of who people are trying to be, rather than just accepting who they are and just like loving themselves. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the most important thing, just to love yourself, accept your flaws. You might not be perfect. No one's perfect. But, if you're listening to this now, just remember that literally everyone's got flaws and they might post it out and it might look different on social media and stuff like that. But no one's perfect and everyone's got flaws and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Adam.
Going back to the pressures of modern life, I think, like you said, financially, to sort of progress in life now, to if you were looking to buy a property or even like you're saying with rent and stuff, the capital that you need is horrendous. I mean, if you're okay, if you're lucky enough, if you've got parents that can sort of help you out and stuff. I never had that. I never had that support. I had to do everything on my own. But I was lucky. I got onto the property ladder when I got a 100% mortgage. My first house.
Wow, that's pressure as well, right?
Yeah, when they were pretty much giving everybody whatever they wanted, and if it wasn't for that, I would have struggled. But I think in life, pressures of how you look, the pressures of owning. Everybody seems to want the new car. Everybody seems to want to have the new Stone Island jacket. Everybody seems to want to have the
status, isn't it?
Yeah, the new phones. And I think in the younger generation, it's even more so. Like you're saying, it's a status symbol and stuff. And just going back onto sort of pressures and images, and I'm sure Matt will agree because we're roughly the same age and you would. Back in the day that I used to go out and drink in Northampton town centre, I could look across a pub and see everybody there. I can never remember seeing a guy that was ripped. I never experienced, I never saw a guy, and when you did see somebody that come in that was built and everything else, and no disrespect to anybody out there that's works on themselves or whatever, they stood out. Nowadays, if you went into a pub in town on a Saturday night, most guys there now will be well built, perfectly tanned, hair amazing. It's like the model look, and I think modern society is pulling on an insecurity of most guys. It's like, this is how you're supposed to look. You watch Love Island, not that I do. My missus has had it on before, and I've sort of caught it as I've walked through rooms. But
yeah, that old chestnut.
Every guy on there, you've never seen a guy with a bit of an overhang over his shorts. He's never seen anybody with a dad bod. They're all completely, shaved chest, six packs, like absolutely toned.
It's pressure again, isn't it?
It's massive pressure because on the media, it doesn't reflect on the normal guy. I'm not saying that normal guys are all, chubby and short or whatever, but in today's society, I think that this whole picture of perfection is pushed on people so much, and I'm saying it about the younger generation. It does have an effect on me too. I do see things, and I do think, well, maybe that's how I should look, and maybe this is how I should do. And the pressure's on me. I can relate.
And I think, like you're saying about Love Island and stuff, it almost sets an expectation again as to how men should be and stuff. Even for girls on Love Island, I'm sure girls sit there and they see all these beautiful girls and they think, oh, I wish I could look like that. Or a man, even if a man doesn't consciously think that when he's watching, he's like, oh, I don't care. Maybe subconsciously he's thinking that he needs to look this way or be like that, to impress women and stuff like that. But in reality, shouldn't people just learn to accept themselves? Now, of course, being healthy is a good thing and a good habit to have, but people shouldn't just adopt certain things that they think they should do. They should adopt what they really want to do. Do you know what I mean? And some people who are comfortable with themselves, it's not about doing something like working out 5 days a week because they don't enjoy it, and they shouldn't be made to feel bad for that. Obviously, I'll always advocate for people to eat healthy and keep themselves well, but like you say, the extremes on Love Island is just, if everyone thinks they've got to look like that and they're comparing themselves to that, surely that's going to put loads of pressure on them. So I'm not surprised that so many people, so many men especially, are having mental health problems at the moment, with those pressures.
Yeah, totally agree. I think sort of speaking from my heart and how I would sort of put this across, I think I got to a point in life where I had to face it to myself and be completely honest, and that came from a doctor who said to me, right, what you need to do is you need to stand in front of the mirror and just look at yourself for as long as it takes before you can actually open up to yourself, and you can see yourself and you can admit
that's powerful.
You can, you literally, I stood there and I stared at myself for, I don't know, it seemed like 20 minutes, it probably 30 seconds, but then you have to identify your flaws to yourself, and you can't move forward and you can't do anything until you're honest with yourself. You can't fix anything. You have to be. It's like an alcoholic. An alcoholic will always deny that they're an alcoholic, or somebody that uses drugs. They'll always deny it, until they get to the point where they put their hands up and say, "This is me,"
and accept it
and own it.
Yeah,
you're never going to move on. And that's what I had to do. I had to stand in front of a mirror and say, right, this is one problem, two problem, and I was reeling off this list of things that were deep in me. But then once I'd done it, a weight had lifted, and then I could put in place, right, what do I do about this now? Because I'd admitted to the fact that I was depressed, I was using alcohol and recreational drugs,
yeah,
I was suicidal, all of the things that I had to sort of get off my chest. Then that was the start of me, be it 15 years of trying to fix myself, but that was where it started. That's where you have to get to in life.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Thanks for that, mate. Now, you did touch on a subject there that I know that we spoke before the podcast that you said you were happy to go into. Now, you did mention about, feeling suicidal and stuff like that. So if you're happy to, if you could just elaborate on how you got to that point and sort of, well, what happened really, if you don't mind, mate.
Yeah, no problem. Things got really dark in life. My mental health was obviously deteriorating by the day. And that had a massive impact on my marriage. I was a new father at the time. My daughter had just been born. And,
okay.
And this is going to sound really weird, but when my daughter was born was the greatest moment of my life, but it absolutely destroyed me, because I became a father and I became somebody's, I had something there that I was supposed to be not in charge, that I was, provide for, and I was the father, and I really struggled because in myself I kept doubting myself, and I kept thinking, I can't do this, I'm not strong enough to be a husband and a dad. And it really impacted, and it impacted not just on me, it impacted on my wife as well.
Okay, so you didn't feel like you were good or strong enough at the time?
No, before my daughter was even 6 months old, I'd already written myself off and thought, I'm not going to be, I'm not made out to be a dad. I can't do it. Not that I didn't want to do it. I just kept saying, you're going to fail. Everything, it was just negativity constantly, just the complete fear of losing my daughter and my wife and stuff like that. So that, like I said, that impacted on my marriage, because I found myself really withdrawn from my daughter growing up, and marriage just fell to bits. Absolutely fell to bits. My wife, I never really let my wife into my head. Only recently, I would say the last few years. So she really struggled. My wife's quite a strong-willed character, and she would struggle to understand how I was feeling, because I wouldn't tell her. She would just see this monster of a person on occasions where things were really bad, and I'd just try and brush it off. I'd shut myself away, sleep for days. That carried on for a while, and it just massively trashed.
Sounds like a tough situation.
It was really tough. It was really tough, and then it came to a head. I think my daughter was probably about 9 months old, I would say. My wife made the decision that she was going to move out for a while and go and live with her mum and dad they live around the corner from us, only about 5 minutes away, because she thought that was the best thing for me. She thought, I mean, if you asked her now, she'd be like, that was totally the wrong thing to do. But I think at the time she thought it was safer for them as well, because
and some space as well, maybe.
Yeah. I was quite aggressive, because I didn't know how to channel it, my sort of thoughts and all this pain and everything else that was going through. So they moved to her mum's, and I think I was alone for about 2 weeks, and I shut myself off from the world. I didn't go to work. I didn't shower for 2 weeks. I didn't do anything.
So you're really not well at that point.
Really, really ill. All I had was my dog. He was sick, and I used to sit there and just talk to my dog for days, hours, and bless him, he used to sit there and listen to all my crap. And anyway, I got to a point on, I think it was New Year's Day. I'd seen my wife and daughter, and I'd gone back home, and on New Year's Day, I'd made the decision that the day after was going to be the day. And it's weird, because you get to a point where, well, I did, I don't know how anybody else, I've never really spoken about, I've never had anybody else speak about this sort of thing to me before.
Okay.
But you get to a point where once you decide that that's the route you're going to take, you find a calmness, like all the hurt and the anger and all the other thoughts that are swirling around your head that have been there for years and everything else, everything seems to go, and you seem to find peace, because you know that you've done all your fighting, and your time now is making things right for when you're not there. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a really, really tough place to be.
Yeah, it is, but it's like a little euphoria. It's a really strange sort of feeling. And I remember on the day, it was a Saturday, I'd got up, had a shower, I'd ironed a suit. I put a suit and tie on, because I didn't want anyone to find me looking. I didn't want anyone to find me in my tracksuit bottoms and a stained T-shirt or whatever that I've been living in for the last 2 weeks, and I wanted to look my best. Absolutely bonkers to think that. I'd got up, I'd had a shave, had a shower, I put my best clothes on. I'd written my letters. I'd written one to my mum, to my wife, and I'd written one to my daughter that just said, "I'm so sorry." That's all I could think to say to my daughter for when she's older. I couldn't even put into words how I would explain what I'd done. And all it said in my daughter's note was, "I'm so sorry." And I just wrote "Dad" underneath it, put them on the mantelpiece, and then I went upstairs into the to the top of the stairs, opened the loft hatch, and we had a rope banister. I took the rope banister off, went into the loft, and I jumped out.
Wow, that's really quite a difficult thing to share. So I really appreciate that, Adam. So when it happened, I mean, obviously, you didn't succeed, thankfully. What were the repercussions of then what happened afterwards? So I assumed you got injured from what happened, or
Yeah, I sustained quite a bad neck injury from the rope. Like you said, thank God. Looking back now, thank God that it was unsuccessful. What sort of came from that was I went to go again. Cut long story short, my mum and my sister. I was supposed to be at an engagement that day. I didn't turn
okay,
up, and my mum and my sister came round because they were worried. They found me. My mum took me back to hers, and they pretty much sat me in a bedroom for 2 days. 'Cause it was on the Saturday. She wanted to take me to the doctors on the Monday, so they kept me in the house, wouldn't let me go out anywhere. And on the Monday, we went straight to the doctors, and the doctor straight away said to my mum, he needs professional help. He needs to go to hospital. And I was a bit all over the place. I was feeling quite angry that I was still there. I was quite shocked that what I actually had done. I was feeling embarrassed. I felt for my mum so much that she had to walk in and see the aftermath of what I'd tried to do. So I was just as confused. And I ended up going to Berrywood Hospital in Northampton. I spent, I think, about a month and a half in Berrywood.
and how was your experience there? Did it help out?
It did, and I know this is going to sound really weird, but my experience at Berrywood Hospital was absolutely fantastic.
That's great to
And
hear.
people knock the NHS, and it seems that no one ever has a good word to say about some of the things that that we have on offer. I can personally say that on the mental health side of the NHS, I could not fault them. I could not fault them. My experience in the hospital, I've been in there a few times since then, but my experience at my most vulnerable was one of absolute professionalism, care, and they really got me onto the track of, right, there is a problem here. You've got to open up. You've got to let us in. You've got to let your wife in. You've got to let your parents in, and it's a team effort. You can't do it all on your own, and I went from there.
Thanks again, Adam, for sharing that story. I know that can't have been necessarily easy to share. It's like obviously a really serious situation. I think for me, my takes from it, it really outlines what happens when people don't share problems and things build and build, and you can almost start to feel worthless in yourself. And then it can lead to these, horrendous situations that a lot of men are finding themselves in at the moment. If you had an opportunity we have got an opportunity now to say to anyone out there who's in that real crisis stage and they're actually dealing with that in their mind right now, what would you say to them?
I would say listen to everything that I've just said. I've probably been in the darkest places. And to be truthful, I shouldn't be sitting here now and talking about any of this. I should be gone.
Yeah,
It should have been all over a long time ago, but it's not. And I find that I'm used to use this platform now to get a message across to people that are in that position. And what I would like to say is that there's always hope. There's always hope. Things can, on any given day, things can seem worse on one day, the next day not so worse. It's just getting caught up on that day where it seems worse and not being capable to deal with it. You probably,
dwelling on it.
exactly. My advice through all of this is just to keep going. You need to be as open with yourself, like I said before. You need to be as open with yourself as you possibly can, because that's where it all starts. You need to be 100% honest with yourself, and once you do that, you need to then let other people in, because I guarantee you guys that are listening to this now deal with it on a personal level on their own, because they don't want anybody to get in, because they don't want anybody to think that that they're not who they say they are, or they're not. Guys are really good at wearing a mask.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
one of my nurses at Berrywood said that I was the absolute classic mask wearer, because I'd walk into a room and I'd be like cracking jokes. Even when I was going for my my treatment, I'd crack jokes with the nurses. I'd be the life and soul, and they used to say, "We absolutely love when you come in because you brighten the day." And the thing was, the more that they got to see of me, the more they knew that it was bullshit. Basically, they knew that it was a mask. They knew that I hid behind this
persona.
Yes, this is what you want to see. This is what you think Adam is. So this is what I'm going to give you. But the longer that they got to know me, they knew there was more behind that, and that wasn't me. So this is what I would sort of recommend, that you need to come away from that. It's all about honesty. Like I said before, and I say it again, it's all about honesty with yourself. It starts within. You've got to be honest with yourself, and then that opens up all other avenues. But then you've got to accept everything else that's on offer. So, like you said before about going to a GP, definitely go to your GP, start the ball rolling, get talking. We've got some fantastic services out there. I mean, medication wise, I said to you that I was on medication for a long period of time. I haven't had medication now for 2 years because I decided that I could change me. I didn't want these. I'd been on medication for donkeys. I didn't want to keep taking these medications. I wanted to
bring about real change.
Exactly. And I sort of self-medicated with, like I said before, going to the gym, massive part, exercise, huge part, structuring my life, even things like silly things like music. Music to me is a massive help in bringing me down. If I'm having a moment, if I'm having a bad day, I put my headphones on, I find a quiet space, and I put whatever it is, if it's like Linkin Park, or if it's, I don't know,
Good choice.
Simon and Garfunkel, or completely different, whatever mood takes you, put your music on and let that is a massive help. But just talking.
That's really, really great advice, and that's advice from someone who's really been there. So if I hope that anyone listening who's at that point now, you've heard it from someone who's actually been in that place as well. So I hope that's really helpful. So Adam, in terms of mental health, I know you said you've had depression, and obviously it led to the situation we just spoke about. Would you say that you suffer from anxiety as well, or not?
I've experienced the anxiety probably 2 or 3 times in my life. It's not nice, but I'm more of a depressive person. I think my personality is such that I'm more prone to depression and anxiety. I do get anxious. I don't get anxious to the point where people have serious problems with anxiety, and it holds them back and stops them from doing things in life and stuff. I can relate to the anxiety feeling. Like I said, I've had anxiety, a couple of anxiety attacks, but for me personally, I think my mind works a little bit differently. So I just experienced the sort of the downers.
Okay, so lots of insights so far from you, Adam. I'm just wondering, I know you said that you've been on various courses of medication treatments. Was there any other treatment that you had that you experienced that you could share with us at all?
Yeah, I've had many different forms of treatment throughout, all that have helped me in massive ways, all that I would recommend, down to meditations.
Meditation's awesome.
Absolutely. I had this while I was in Berrywood Hospital, and at first I sort of scoffed at it and thought, no way, but unbelievable. There's so much. But last June I was referred to a unit in Berrywood Hospital that deal with magnetic shock treatment. And people will listen to this now and think, oh my God, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest sort of thing. But it's definitely not that. I did have my concerns when they told me what it was. It was quite a shocking thing to hear. Shocking, excuse the pun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did some research on YouTube and watched various videos, and I was keen to give it a go. I was supposed to have 30 days, 5 days a week of this treatment, which is a large magnet strapped to your head. You sit in a comfy chair, and they shock different parts of your brain. It's only a little.
Okay.
It's only like a static shock. It is uncomfortable at first, but you get used to it. And they shock different parts of your brain. And what it does is they identify the part of your brain that's not firing properly, and they stimulate it. And you go through this process, and like I said, normal processes have 30 days of it. Then you have a break,
Okay.
have a week's or so break, and then you go back, and they see. I ended up having 7 months of it because they felt that I was so severe that they just carried it on, and it rolled and rolled and rolled. It was really weird because it came part of my life. I used to go up every day at 12 o'clock, go and have my lunch at the hospital canteen. Got to know the canteen ladies really well. Used to get freebies and go and have my treatment. And I have to say that the treatment saved my life, because I was slipping into
Wow.
A place again where I was feeling worthless. I was feeling those feelings like I did when my daughter was born. I was feeling that I wasn't a great husband. I wasn't any use in life if I wasn't here. Who would miss me? All of those negative cliches that people say and feel and stuff when they're actually gripped into depression. And it was a long process. But in January this year, before the world went absolutely bonkers,
Yeah, it certainly did.
I finished my treatment, and anybody that knows me well will sort of clarify the fact that as a person, it completely changed me. Absolutely, completely
For the
changed
better?
me for the better. It's like it completely rewired my whole thought process. It stimulated me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have little dips, but what it did was it gave me the mental capacity to deal with those dips, whereas before those dips would turn into massive fall downs, and then I would be consumed. But now I feel that I've got the strength and the mental well-being to sort of overcome those problems, and that's where it changed me as a person. So if anybody out there is struggling they've been to the doctors, because trust me, when you go to the doctors, there is times where they just think, oh, we'll give you another pill, or we'll up this dosage, or we'll do this. Please ask for like alternative methods. Please ask if there's anything out there. Research different ways. If you're not comfortable in the medication route, there is so much you can do, and I couldn't recommend the RTMS treatment anymore.
Perfect. That's great advice, and that's really insightful as well. Over the next coming weeks, we are going to be talking about all the different types of therapies, like alternative therapies and stuff that there are out there for men to connect with who are in crisis at the moment, or who need help. So that's something that we'll definitely be touching on. So we're going to wrap things up soon, Adam. Is there anything that you wanted to conclude on as a general thought that you could mention to people about what you've been through? And yeah, just a real sort of finishing statement.
I'd like to sort of sign off by just saying to everybody that it's okay not to feel okay. You know,
Definitely.
it's one of these things that's it's put out there a lot, but it's definitely true. And there's no shame in feeling different. There's nothing to sort of worry about, nothing to try and hide. I think that once we accept how we're feeling, that's when we sort of can sort of put things in motion to do it. So I would urge anybody that's feeling any signs of any sort of mental illness, be it anxiety, depression, anything that they don't feel right with, that's fine. I want to say own it. just be open, basically. Just accept what's going on. If you found a lump in your testicle, you go to the doctors and you'd get it treated. You'd accept it, wouldn't you? With mental health, you've got to then, you wouldn't just leave that because it could be catastrophic. The same with your mental health. You've got to identify it as early as you can. You've got to be as open as much as you can. Let as many people as you can in to help you. And it does get better. Me and Matt are both sitting here now. You too, Tom. We're three guys sitting here doing this. We're all testament to the fact that we do have our tough times. We do have our struggles. We do have our dark days. But we're all living proof that with the right support and the right attitude and the right help, you will get through this. So anybody that listens to this, I give you my word that if you need the help, get it, because you will come through the other end.
Wow, what a way to finish. That really is powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you to Matt as well. You've both been absolutely awesome. Can't thank you enough. As I said before, it is a difficult thing for people to come out and speak about, but the whole point of this podcast is to encourage anyone out there who's going through issues in their life at the moment and they feel like they can't talk about it. The best thing you can do is talk about it. So I just want to finish on a few sort of things that I took from today's podcast. So for me, there's an ongoing theme of like pressure on men as to who we should be and living up to that expectation. And that in turn is really bringing us further away from who we actually are, and is probably creating a situation where a lot of men are starting to despise themselves or feel like they're not enough. And that in turn is contributing to the high level of mental health issues within men, and also, unfortunately, the amount of men who are killing themselves every week in this country. So, yeah, it's a really good first episode. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening. And looking forward to the next few weeks. As I've said, we've got some different types of guests, some who are inspirational speakers and also people who have programs that help men deal with their issues that they're currently having. So, yeah, thanks again. And just remember that it's okay not to be okay. Thank you.